What's up, chat? Tonight, we are going to be watching, for no reason in particular, a 2-year-old debate between Demon Mama and RGR. Demon Mama is a lefty variety streamer. RGR, or Riley Grace Roshong, is a former streamer whose online career imploded after a particularly embarrassing debate performance. That debate is not what we're going to be watching today. Today's debate is about what it means to be a woman. Also, apparently it's Doom's 30th anniversary. I was going to play Doom anyway, but now I can pretend I'm being festive. Oh, and by the way, if any imps happen to be watching, even though we will be shooting demons indiscriminately, we do not hold any prejudice towards imps on this show. This is an imp-friendly community. I just want to make that known. Anyway, let's get into it.
Find things according to like biological sex. Essentially, there's like two ways that you could interpret the literature. So what the literature is pretty clear on is that like bimodal distribution of sex, people exist on the spectrum of sex. Usually you want to focus on like the qualities that are sexed in a person rather than trying to sex an entire organism, right? So usually like people, like based on totality of their qualities, will fall into, based on those qualities, categories which we'll probably find as like male and female. Obviously, there are people who don't fit into those. Trans people are a great example. But then there's a question of like, okay, so like how do we define these smaller traits which individually make up some organism, right? Or big argument, like this is like the Steelman version of like the TERF argument I always hear is like the gametic entailment argument. TERFs will argue essentially because because someone can only produce one of two types of gametes, that inherently means that there's two gametes, two sexes, that's it, right? Like that's essentially what their argument is. And the response to this argument, and this is the one that I got from Avi, who is a doctor who actively studies biology, which is wonderful. Also apparently a vegan. I'm not going to debate him on that for a while. I'm kicking the vegan can down the road. Apparently that's what he's primarily known for. But anyway, so essentially the argument is that like Avi will not dispute that necessarily those individual things have a sex. But there's a difference between the gametes that an organism produces and how we categorize those gametes and how we categorize the organism doing the producing, you know? And so essentially like you can like and so like and again, I'm not saying that this is necessarily the greatest way to do this. You know, I take a scientific realist approach. I think that the best way of categorizing something is the way which gives the most consistent and reliable outcomes. And so if this is the way that we do it, then fine. If not, then you know that's subject to further discussion, and it's probably going to continue evolving in the literature as the literature continues to explore this idea. But essentially, like you could either look at something. So then, like, if we bring this back into like the discussion of like, all right, penis, is it inherently like, is it a male organ or is it just like an organ? I think that there you could probably fall either way. Like with the penis, it's important to remember that like penis, like all the genitals kind of like form from the same place. Like they start out essentially the same, and then through exposure to testosterone, usually is what, like if you just like leave a penis alone and you don't expose it to testosterone, it's probably just gonna develop into a vulva, or just not gonna do anything, right? Like it requires.
I mean, that would mean, by that argument, like, then would it not mean that by this particular argument, then you could argue that a penis is a male sex organ, but you could not argue that a vulva is a female sex organ, because all humans, regardless of their genetic sex, always start with a vulva because it requires the input of testosterone to even develop a penis in the first place.
I don't know about that, but I mean, like,
pretty sure that's the case.
Maybe. I have to think on that more. But essentially, like this, like these are the kind of issues that we come up with, right? So I mean, like, essentially, when we're trying to say that, like, oh, a penis is clearly one of two kind of categories, what's like.
I think what Demon Mama is saying is sound there. Hopefully, somebody can correct me if not.
No, I mean, you know, you could, like, because of the way that it develops, like, I think that there are a lot of places where you could say that like there are certain sex qualities, and if you want to say that's one, then sure. But I think that people assume that it's like this very strict binary thing with genitals when you look at the way it develops, I'm not sure if it's as open and shut a case.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. I think it's kind of a silly argument to make. To me, it seems like that argument is functionally like arbitrary, and also so it doesn't give us anything. Like, we don't gain anything from calling a penis a male sex organ and a vulva a female sex organ. We don't gain anything from that. We could just call them penises and vulvas, right? Like, why
Well,
do
I
they
mean,
need
it depends on how we're using the term like male and female, right? So I mean, if we're using the term male and female to describe like different paths of
So, as I understand it, a female, like our conception of female is just a bunch of characteristics that are like grouped together, that are just categorized as being associated with things, including like penis or vagina. I'm not sure if Demon Mama is advocating for sex abolition or something. I mean, valid if that's her argument. I'm just not sure if that's what she's arguing for. Maybe a misunderstanding.
sexual development, then it might give us utility because it mean, like basically it would be like, so like if we take the example of
But by that
right?
same argument, though, would that not mean that it would be okay for like trans people to be like referred to as like male then?
No.
Colloquial?
No. Like I'm very specific to say that like, again, because of the fact that like the literature seems to be moving towards more defining qualities of the person with sex rather than the entire organism, then you wouldn't be able to define like a trans woman as like a quote unquote biological male, right? Because a trans woman, especially on HRT, now pre-HRT, it's
That's not necessarily true. A trans woman doesn't just go through a change in gender. She can go through a change in sex as well if the sex characteristics match like what the sex they're transitioning to is. So it is possible for a trans woman to be biologically female.
it's going to be a bit of a harder argument. There is some evidence to be able to suggest that like there is still some kind of biological quality. I mean, like this gets into the question of like, what's the cause of gender dysphoria? What's the cause of people wanting to be trans in the first place? Like, what causes those mental functions which happen in the first place? Right. There's probably something there. There's some literature to suggest that like the brain is
right. It's not.
Well, yeah.
Unless you're a dualist and you believe there's like, unless you believe that it's like a soul thing, that like you have a female soul. But I don't believe in that. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not going to believe that. But I mean, like, you want to be a little bit careful here because you can easily get into, like, some trans medicalist arguments because, I mean, then then we are necessarily, I mean,
that
like,
would be bad.
Not even technically, like, we are necessarily getting into questions of, like, all right, so what does it mean medically speaking to be trans? So you want to just be careful because oftentimes if you're not careful, then you can accidentally start, like, drawing lines. I don't know, like, you know, fortunately, like, people who are reasonably knowledgeable about, like, the, about trans discourse are usually able to have like a pretty good head about this sort of thing.
Right.
Just because like, logically speaking, I guess that I have like a Avi voice in the back of my head now. You could think of this in terms of like looking out for what would result like a rule which would result in like in a reductio ad absurdum, right? Like if you were going to propagate a rule, would that rule result in like outcomes that are clearly wrong? You know? So like with a lot of trans medicalist arguments, you know, you get into a question of like, all right, so what if you have a trans person, like for example, if we define what is necessary, like required to be a true trans person is to have diagnosed gender dysphoria, that's going to have a problem because that naturally means that you are going to exclude people who we probably would define as trans, but who may not have experienced gender dysphoria or who may have not been sufficiently diagnosed with gender dysphoria.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, or who were incapable of being diagnosed, regardless of the fact that they're actually trans.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so, like, that's an example, and I mean, like, that's the like that's the easy argument to say like why a lot of trans medicalists are wrong. But that doesn't mean that there's not a different
What if I can, like,
definition of what it
I
means
don't
to be
have
trans. It just means
chain
that we want to
gun.
be able to have a definition which
chainsaw.
does not exclude people who we do not want to exclude, but also doesn't include people who we don't want to include, right? We probably don't want to say that like, and this is this is also my take, and this is probably this is probably like my spiciest trans take, but I think I'm pretty pilled on this or whatever. I don't think that we can just say anyone who identifies as trans is trans.
Why?
I don't think that. I think that if we naturally, well, I think that the reason why is if we go with that, then we get into, it's a logical flaw. It's called infinite regress. Basically, like it's a logical fallacy to say that just saying that you're something equals being that thing. Now, I think that there's a definition of.
This is the same argument that transphobe Vosh was using as well. Oh, what was his name? Bogardus? I think that's who did that. Yeah, that's weird.
Of what it means to be trans, which is able to accomplish the same thing, which is essentially like, so for example here, let me pull up like the definition that I have relied on, which seems to get me through most things, right?
Sure.
Usually what I look at is like objective and subjective gender. So like objective meaning the totality of your gendered expressions and how society reciprocates and interprets those, combined with the subjectivity, like the totality of your mental processes, which motivates you to make those expressions, right? So for example, if you say, I am a woman, that is a gendered expression. That's an expression that you make to society. And if you are in a you're in a social space which recognizes that expression and acknowledges that to mean that you are a woman and treats you like that, then objectively speaking, you have met the criteria to be a woman.
So then,
right?
should we not set that as the criteria then?
No. I would say that. Well, I would say that this is like this is like a good criteria, and also like we can test this against a lot of like a good way to be able to see if a rule like this or if a principle like this works is to be able to test it, right? Because I think that like this is what we see, for example, in the two coolest examples I like are closeted trans people and Discord. Because I think that Discord is cool. I think that like for example, let me ask you, why do we have gendered roles in trans-friendly Discords? Like, why do we have them?
I mean, because we have because our society and our language requires that we frequently use pronouns, and we create in order to facilitate comfortable use of pronouns, and we unilaterally agree to have, I mean, those of us are trans-friendly spaces, will have bots that will automatically allow you to identify which pronouns you prefer.
But I mean, like, if you go into an online space, like if you go into a Discord and you don't have a pronoun role, okay, and you never say what your pronouns are, you know, then I would say that there's no guarantee, or it would be hard. Like, people are going to be looking for ways or some kind of basis to be able to gender you, and hopefully gender you correctly, right? Like, hopefully people are going to be like conscientious and be like, oh, I want to know how to gender this person.
Right, but we don't. We obviously don't. We don't want to leave that up to chance, because it's not fun for either party. It's difficult to try and gender someone based off of loose associations and assumptions, and we acknowledge that, and so therefore we use pronoun bots, because it's just simply easier and more functional for both parties involved to just allow people to identify as they please.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, I think that there's more to unpack there, right? Because I don't think that it's just the self-identification. I think that there's more to it than that, right? Because when you...
I don't really think that that's so much the case.
No, I...
Like...
Well, sure. Then can I explain this?
Sure,
Right?
sure.
Okay. So I think that when you choose a gendered pronoun, or when you choose a pronoun role, right? What that comes up in, like the context that comes up in, is if you have someone who is interacting with someone else, and based on the totality of their interactions, cannot yet tell how to gender that other person. Either the other person has not expressed what their gender is, either the other person has just been acting in a way that is neutral or that has not given them enough information to be able to make a sufficient determination.
Okay.
And so someone will look at what other types of expressions that person is making.
Mhm.
And in Discord, there's really not that many. You can have a PFP, but nowadays that can't tell you a whole lot.
Sure.
It can tell you sometimes a decent bit, but I mean, like, it's not necessarily determinative.
Sure.
And so, like, a really determinative thing that exists in online spaces is being able to look at pronoun roles. And if you look at someone's pronoun roles and you see she, her, that's a social expression that someone, and mind you, it's not like someone necessarily just chooses that just for the sake of choosing it, right? It's not
Well,
like I
you
woke
don't
up.
know that. You never can know that. That's
I'm not sure
it's
that's
impossible to know
impossible
that.
to know.
It's impossible to know. How could you ever know the reasons why someone else chooses whatever like role? Like, I mean, you run into the problem
I mean,
where
like, there's evidence to be able to suggest that, like, even if I'm not saying that it's necessarily like, I think that there's enough evidence to be able to suggest, and I think that
Like literally, she's assuming that you could read someone's mind, it seems like, unless you're just talking about making some kind of like reasonable assertion, but then we get into the question of transvestigating people, and I think we all know why that like leads to harmful outcomes, or at least I hope we do. Guess we could get into it if anyone has any questions.
we can like match this against our own experiences, right? I think that this is probably consistent with our own experiences, right?
Maybe.
No one just chooses to be trans like in the same way that someone chooses what to put on, like chooses what to wear in the morning. Like there is there is a choice which necessitates that that outcome, right? Like there is like when someone makes the choice to come out as trans, it's not so much a choice to be trans, but rather a choice to express who they are, right? Like I think that
I mean, I think it depends on the person, right? Like, I think that would be largely true for most like binary trans people. But I
are
don't.
you saying I'm trying to understand, because I mean, like, my understanding of just about every trans person is that that experience is not a choice. It's an intrinsic part of who they are.
I mean, I don't know that, like, I mean, I don't know that I would make distinctions to that degree, because I don't think we can ever know. And so I don't think that for the purposes of categorization that it's mostly, like, mostly useful to worry about whether the intention is.
So, in terms of her approach, RGR seems to be very interested in, like, sussing out who the fake trans people are, which sounds a lot like our last stream as well, on the whole transmedicalism thing. I'm not saying that RGR is advocating for transmedicalism here, but that is a bit of a parallel.
For example, like, I don't know. Okay, so, I'm trying to think of an example of this. Like, is somebody who chooses to, like, wear gender like they would wear clothes, is that person's gender expression any less valid than someone who has some sort of dysphoria issue? I think that it's very hard to separate these things out, given how deeply deeply entrenched the concepts of gender roles are in our society, and how nonsensical they are. They're like highly chaotic. What's that?
No, I don't. But you have to be very careful, because I mean, like, so if we're throwing out the necessity for someone, like if we're throwing out hold on, if we're throwing out subjectivity, because that's what it sounds like. So we're just basing it off of. All right, hold on. I just need to clarify, because
Sure.
So I'm pretty sure Demon Mama's position is that we can't know what's in somebody's head, and ultimately, even if somebody's doing some like sussy kind of shit that seems like maybe they're not really trans, that you can't know that they're not really trans, and therefore we should do what is most pragmatic and causes the least harm, which is to just listen to people. And maybe we get some fake trans people in that net, but what's the greater harm there? It seems like a very small issue to be very worried about, like creating fake trans people as some kind of boogeyman or something.
I want to be careful. Subjectivity and objectivity are both very important to me, because if you don't have subjectivity, then that means that, like, let's say that, for example, we have a pre-transition trans woman,
Okay.
right?
Right.
Someone who presents guy completely,
sure.
right? If you throw subjectivity out and you just rely on objectivity and the way that they express themselves in society and how society treats them, that's a guy. That's only a guy. There's only a guy there. All right, we don't want to do that. We don't want to say
Well,
that.
I wasn't making that argument at all.
But if we
Should
throw out
use the chainsaw.
subjectivity, then that's essentially what we're left with.
Wait.
'Cause if you,
I think
we
there may have
can't
been a
rely on-
misunderstanding here.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm not saying throwing out subjectivity. What do you mean by that when you say that?
Subjectivity is like the internal mental processes which necessitate an identity, like an expression of objective gender. Right? Because we can't just say that's like we cannot.
Well, I don't think there's such a thing as objective gender. I don't think that
Well,
gender.
hold on. Objective. I'm using. All right. Hold on.
Like, what does that even mean? What is objective gender? Like, objectively, whether or not it's in somebody's head? Like, whether they're lying? Like, who cares?
Objective. I'll define objective.
Okay.
Objective. I'm using to mean how the average reasonable person in a space or society interprets the totality of someone's expressions to categorize into a certain gender.
So what
right?
you're saying is
So
like what people conclude you are.
Well, it's your expressions and how people interpret your expressions based on your expressions, right? Like if I go outside and dress in a certain way, my expressions will be interpreted different gender-wise based on what different parts of the world I'm in.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, it's but I think that most people don't have a coherent set of rules for that. I think they just literally follow their emotions.
Well, I think that no, but that's why I'm trying to make it a reasonable standard, because it's not based necessarily on some kind of like hard set like
Empirical cow
criteria. It's
territory.
based on how the average reasonable person in society interprets it, right? That's going to change all the time. That's going to vary from person to person. But overall, you look at like the average person in society, there's going to be like broad trends in what people expect, right? In America, kind of like Western kind of idea, you know, you have some broad trends like long hair, dresses.
But I think those are like really like I think those are incredibly fuzzy. Like in my experience as well.
It might be fuzzy, but we're talking about like broad averages, right? Like broad, and those can change over time. Those can be time and context specific.
How can you make determinative, like, objective standards based on broad trends? Like, that's admitting that there's going to be outliers there. So how are you going to call that objective? You're going to be like getting false positives and false negatives.
Right? But like broadly speaking, we're just talking about like the average image of a woman in society, and that can change, and people like activists can push that meaning to change all the time.
Sure.
That's like a really important aspect of what a lot of like trans activists, not using that term disparagingly, but like actually that's like a lot of like what the work in what they do entails is that they push the average reasonable interpretation of what it means to be a gender by virtue of their activism. A really good example is like normalizing the idea that a woman does not have to have a certain kind of voice, right?
True.
There was probably a point in history where the average reasonable person expected that a woman have a certain kind of voice or have a voice within a certain range of voices, right?
Sure.
But,
I mean, I think that still exists to this day. I mean, I get misgendered all the time based on that.
Well, I mean, I think that as time progresses and trans women become more normalized in society, especially trans women who have voices which are not conventional to how the average reasonable person expects for voices to sound, then that expectation changes to the point where now the average reasonable person does not necessarily require that as a sufficient or necessary condition to be categorized in what they define as a woman.
I think we're playing like a little
Eventually,
fast and loose with those, but yeah, I see what you're saying. You're saying that this can be changed, but I guess I'm just a little lost as to what the like why any of this would matter with regard to what we decide like being trans means.
Hold on. All right, let me go with that. So it's necessary because so when we're bringing it back into what it means to be trans, well, I mean, I guess it goes to what it means to be a gender generally. Because if we're accepting that trans people are a gender which is contrary to the one that they were assigned at birth, then we need to be able to find what a gender is, because what a gender is necessary to understand. Like it's a categorization that's necessary to understand what it means to be trans. Because if you are gender contrary to what you were assigned at birth, then we need to know what a gender is. You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would argue that, again, I argue that, like, I would point out that I don't think that, like, our society has consistent or sensical, even the average reasonable person doesn't tend to have consistent or sensical understandings of what gender or sex is.
I don't think that that's the case. I think that there are like broad trends. I don't think that everyone's idea of what it means to be a woman is exactly the same, but I think that there are like broad trends, right?
But when you
like,
when you have someone, when you do have
location.
A comparable idea of what a woman, like when you think woman, most people have like some vague ideas that come to their mind.
Sure, but
right?
so do people. But when you say a transgender person, they'd have that too. There's all kinds of like stereotypes and assumptions, and those vary greatly.
Many people have different ideas on
well,
what
sure,
a
but I mean, like that's a matter not of like that's not necessarily an inherent flaw. That's just a matter of like activism to show other people that's a matter of like shifting the idea of what the average reasonable person believes, right?
Maybe.
Because like here's I guess like to clarify, in an objective sense, I think it's very important. Well, nothing about what other people think about me makes me a woman, though. Well, I think that like when I'm trying to explain like objectivity, all right?
Yeah.
Because people don't. I'm trying to make sure that people understand like the term objectivity, and that's different from subjectivity, and that those are two different things, and that they have often clashes, and that they don't necessarily overlap, but for a lot of people that they do. And so like when we're talking about objectivity, right? When we're getting into this question of like, okay, so you have a trans woman. Let's say that we're a trans woman in early 2000s. Okay. Let's say that you're also a trans woman who did not have a ton of access to gender affirming care earlier in life.
Sure.
And so you go on through life, and then later on in life, you're like, oh shit, I'm trans, but also it's early 2000s. People are going to treat me shittily, but whatever, I'm going to fucking own it. I'm going to start going on HRT. I'm going to start presenting femme. Fuck boy moding. I'm just going to go straight into it, right?
Sure.
Now, I think that there is a really compelling argument. That person subjectively is a woman, right? They have taken, they've taken a lot of materially important steps to, for example, like start identifying as a woman, to start expressing themselves as a woman, to start telling other people that they're a woman. Like they took those steps because they realized they had to do that. Like it's not just a choice. Like they realized that they were intrinsically a woman, right?
Sure.
But then when they go outside, they may not be treated as a woman because society is at this point, based on the average reasonable person's interpretation of what a woman means, they may go outside and they may not be treated as a woman. That is not necessarily, like that has nothing to do with their subjectivity, like with their subjective understanding of gender. And that's not saying anything negative about their subjective understanding of gender. Like subjectively, there is like they are completely 100% a woman, right? But there also is a meaningful understanding and being able to address the fact that like they're not treated as a woman in society.
Well, yeah,
right?
I mean that's just passing, right? This is just
That is
passing
passing.
politics, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, like that's changing, right? Because we're able to.
Well, yeah, we're
because over
changing
the course of
passing
time-
politics, but we're not changing what it means to be a woman. We're just changing the politics of passing.
I think that we kind of are changing what it means to be a woman, right?
Maybe.
Like at least in an objective.
I mean,
sense.
I would argue that, like, in an objective sense, like, again, I would argue that in an objective sense, it's almost incoherent.
In an objective sense, all of them are equally valid. By what criteria would you decide that a particular point in history or a particular anything would, like, be more valid than the other? You can't say that one type of idea of what a woman is more valid than another one. Or at least I don't know how you could make that argument. It seems to be what RGR is trying to do, but she's not really saying it.
There are tons and tons of
well,
yeah, like,
I mean, like in a sense, yeah, like gender is all societally constructed, right? But that means it's necessarily going to change over time. Like, sure, it's all incoherent, but there's some meaning to what it means to be a woman, right? Like being a woman means something. I think that something changes over time, but
it means something contingent upon the context in which it's being said, which is completely variable.
means something.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean that's like saying
all right,
words have
just
meanings,
define for me. Hold on, I just need to make sure. Like, define for me what a woman is. I know that TERFs do this all the time. I just need to hear, like, just to understand, like, what is a woman?
Yeah, I think a woman is.
I'm gonna answer that as well. I think a woman is the broad category that we historically or contemporarily associate with the female sex of so like broad category of social characteristics that we associate with the female sex. Yeah.
Is a person who identifies as a woman. Like, I literally think it's that simple.
That's valid too, but that's more an answer to the question, who is a woman? But that's still valid and still true.
No, you can't do that. That gets you a
And yes, you can do that, actually. You can just say a woman is somebody who identifies as a woman, and then that second word is basically has a footnote or whatever, like an asterisk, and it says the other thing, which is the broad category of social characteristics that we associate with the female sex. It's not a problem at all. It's just a basic variable. Just because the names are the same doesn't mean the two words are referring to the same thing. It's pretty elementary.
Infinite regress. Like, it's a logical fallacy. You cannot just say that.
Well, yeah, but I think that identify
it's not a logical
like
fallacy.
Womanhood is a incoherent concept. That
No. I'm not hearing about incoherent. Like, you cannot just say that the definition of something is identifying as something. Like, hold on. Like,
I don't know. I think you can, because the fact that
Yes.
I think you actually can. Like, it's frustrating.
This is going to be painful, by the way. The entire debate hinges upon Riley's misunderstanding of this fundamental point of the question and answer. What is a woman? She's just not engaging with, like, the actual definition being provided. And she spends the entire time shadowboxing, so get comfortable, I guess.
But this is it's a limitation of language. This is it is a linguistic limitation. I mean, you can say it's a logical fallacy all you want, but like it's and I agree with you that the wording doesn't make sense. But I mean, we can get into fucking Wittgenstein if you want to. It always comes back to Wittgenstein, doesn't it?
Yeah,
but
I mean, like, fine. Like, you can bring it, like,
yeah, we can talk about linguistics. Like, the fact of the matter is that, like, what makes you a human? Like, we don't have any coherent definition for what really makes a human. We choose we decide what human means.
You can't just make human being a human. Like, you can't just say that X equals X.
I mean,
right?
I think that a woman is a person.
You can't say that X equals X. Brilliant.
Who identifies as a woman. I think
but you can't do that.
Wait, yes, you literally can. If that is
right, no.
Wait, yes, you actually can, because you're saying that that the state of womanhood is simply choosing to claim womanhood, saying I am a woman. There you are. There you have it. That is perfectly fine. That's like saying like it's an identifier. It's if you choose to take this title on yourself, then you have that title. It is a free title to be taken.
Like, you need to be careful.
That's
this
true.
is literally so when
That's
people make the
objectively
attack helicopter meme, this is literally the logic that gets you into the house.
Nope, actually it isn't.
Then how isn't? Then explain to me how that's different. Like,
wait.
I'm really trying to be, like, thoughtful with this.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like you're getting a little frustrated about it, but that's fine. Like, if you want to, like, I mean, I'm okay with, like, what's that?
No. I mean, like, it is a little, like, all right, sure, it is a little bit frustrating, because I mean, like, I care a lot about making sure that our arguments are able to stand up to scrutiny. This is a very
don't hour us. I'm an individual and you're an individual. I'm not going to be policed.
Okay, you are a representative. All right, you are acting as a representative.
Is my audio actually recording? Oh, God. Well, I hope so. I'm not starting stream over. I'll just assume that it is.
Representative of a larger community. All right, when I'm saying us, yes, like you are not just acting as an individual here.
Yeah, but yeah, actually, I mean, that is true. You sound a lot like Destiny right now, to be completely honest.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Hold on. Wait, no. Wait, why are you attacking me personally?
I'm not attacking you personally. I'm just pointing out that in this moment, like you're saying, you're basically implying that if I have like a flawed argument, that I'm somehow misrepresenting the trans community, and I don't think that's fine.
No, hold on. Don't take my words out of context. I'm not saying that you're misrepresenting the trans community. I'm saying that because you're a public figure, I want to make sure that your arguments have strong validity.
I want to make sure your arguments have strong validity. I wouldn't want you representing us poorly.
I have done, I can guarantee you, I have done a ton of work to make sure that they are able to stand up to scrutiny. I've gone against.
Likewise, me too. Also, I've been kicking at this a bit longer than you have too.
I mean, what is this supposed to be like a measuring contest? I'm not trying to make a measuring contest.
I mean,
I'm not like, I'm literally like, don't make this into like a competition.
Wait a second, hold on. Let's take a second. You started getting worked up. I pointed out that this was becoming emotional.
Like the reason I'm getting worked up is because you're not listening to me. Like,
wait, hold on a second.
No. Can you define a woman? Hold on. Are you talking to me? Is Riley struggling with identity not being objective? No, you cannot. Do I need to talk about this? All right. Do people not understand this concept? X equals Y plus X. All right. Do you see a problem with that?
How do you
see a problem? X equals Y plus X.
X equals Y plus X. I don't see how this is coherent. Like, how does that tie back to anything at all?
All right, no, because this is what you're doing. If you say that being a woman, X, equals identifying Y as a woman, X, this is what you're proposing logically.
Let me ask you, how do you define woman?
All right, I will go through it again. All right, I define a woman as a gender. A gender is based both.
Well, this just means that y is 0. Like, that's algebraically, that's a valid equation. This is just like reduced to x equals x.
All right, no, because this is what you're doing. If you say that being a woman, X, equals identifying Y as a woman, X, this is what you're proposing logically.
Let me ask you, how do you define woman?
All right, I define a woman as a gender. A gender is based both objectively and subjectively. Objectively meaning it's comprised of A, the totality of one's social expressions, B, the average reasonable person's interpretations of those expressions, and C, the average reasonable person's categorization of one based on those interpretations. 2, subjectively, meaning it's comprised of the totality of one's involuntary thought processes, which lead one to make those expressions. That is in no way contradictory, like it completely avoids this issue, which is an infinite regress. Like, it's meaningless. This is logically meaningless.
Okay, so your definition is that woman is a gender, yes. And that a gender is defined by what other people decide you are and what you decide you are.
No. Well, I mean, it's defined based on first objectivity, which means, and I'll say it again, objectivity.
Okay, I get it. Like, you don't need to do little like.
Well, you asked me to clarify.
Yeah, I'm trying to genuinely clarify, but you don't have to like, do the little snipies. Because I mean, if again, like.
Wait, what little?
Like, I'll explain it again then. Like, that is like not like, you don't. I'm just trying to get where you're coming from. Like, you don't have to like,
Then all right, then please tell me. I'm trying to not trying to be angry. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I like you. I'm trying to be
Is she
fine.
talking like that?
Yeah,
right.
I mean.
Tell me where in any of my definitions what it means to be a gender there's any misunderstanding.
Well, I was doing just that. What I'm saying is that what I'm trying to ask is that if your definition is that a gender equals what society understands you as, which is your objective, and what? Okay, so then
that's not what I said.
Okay, explain to me again.
I said it's the totality of your social expressions, how society interprets those social expressions, and society's categorization of you based on those social expressions.
Okay.
That's objective gender.
So then,
where's she getting
so
this
then
from?
continue.
All right, and then you have subjective gender, which looks at the totality of your involuntary thought processes. Like, it's not just a choice, it's not just something that people do. Every trans person can have this. You can be non-binary, you can be literally any gender, all right? And as long as you have involuntary thought processes which motivate your choice to be your gender, then that's subjective gender. All right, you are that person. You are that gender subjectively. Sometimes objective and subjective gender conflict. Often this is the case for people who are experiencing dysphoria or who are in the closet, right? If you have a subjective understanding of gender, like if you believe yourself to be a woman, and yet society interprets your social expressions to treat you as a guy, you're probably going to experience gender dysphoria, right? That's often what it means to experience gender dysphoria, is that your understanding, your subjective understanding of your gender is different from how society is treating you, right? That doesn't make you less of a woman. That's acknowledging that society is not treating you in the way that you want them to interpret your expressions.
Okay, but you do realize that in your definition of gender, you use the word gender 2 times. So you said that gender is a totality of objective gender and subjective gender.
Which means
so
she
how can
hasn't
gender be
understood.
defined?
All right, no. Gender is, there's 2 types of gender.
She's just bullshitting on this one.
So which one of those is true gender?
There's no. What do you mean? Which one of those is true gender? There's no.
If a woman if a woman is a gender, then there has to be one of those that is used to define what a gender is. But you now
both of them can be different genders. They're different things.
Okay. So you think then a woman.
You can define woman objectively. You can define it subjectively. Those are different.
Okay. So then how would one person be a woman if there are 2, unless you're saying that there is not actually woman, but there is actually social woman and there is internal woman?
I mean, like, there's 2 different, like, ways to use woman. Like, there's 2 different ways to define gender. So you're going to have 2 different ways to apply woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. But you do realize that, like, that's you're saying that there are 2 different words that you use the same word for. Because if you define woman,
woman is a gender. There are 2 different types of.
And that was the same thing that we said earlier with Demon Mama's definition, is that there's the word woman, whereas you're asking what is a woman, and then there's the woman within the definition itself, which just refers to the broad category of social characteristics related to sex. So it's the same argument RGR is using, Demon Mama can use.
Of gender.
Okay, so a woman is a gender.
Yes.
There are 2 types of gender.
Yes.
Okay. And
you can have objective woman and you can have subjective woman. Those are different.
Okay. So then, which one of those determines whether you're a woman or not?
They're both they both can determine if you're a woman.
So
you can be a woman subjectively and you can be a woman objectively. Those are different things. They often overlap for a lot of people. Like if you're a passing trans woman, they overlap for you.
Who's a subjective
But those
woman?
can be different.
Okay. So in that,
like there's no like I want you to eliminate the idea of like which one of those is the true gender from your mind. They're both equivalent.
I feel like in this case, this goes towards my argument, which is that.
What do you mean it goes towards?
Hold on. Well, let me explain real quick. Because if what you're saying is that there are 2 separate versions of the word woman, and both of them are completely different and essentially irreconcilable in certain cases.
They're not completely different.
I mean, they are. You've said that one is what your internal understanding of your gender is, and one is the external understanding of gender.
No, I didn't say that.
So
no,
they're different categories.
You did.
You can't say it's your internal understanding of your gender because that would entail an infinite regress.
You just described. Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
describe it
my
again.
chat is saying you definitely did do this, but.
No. I definitely didn't. I'll read it.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can. I want to make sure that we can get the. I want to make sure we can get across this.
You can pull up my research doc. I have it right there. I'm
that's-
literally just reading from it.
That's fine. That's fine, Riley. Like, okay, there are 2 types.
Why are you talking down to me? You don't have to demean me.
I'm not talking down to you.
I'm literally trying to help you understand like a legitimate like
Riley.
this is.
Riley.
I'm not trying like this
She's
is like the
just trying to
equivalent of
de-escalate.
arguing to someone whether or not 2 + 2 is 4. Right? Like
Okay,
it is
holy.
like what you are saying, like just identifying as a woman is a woman, like that is an infinite regress. There's no like buts about it. Like that's what it is.
Yeah, but like we recognize that like tautologies are like what you're describing is a tautology, correct?
What do you mean I'm describing a tautology? I'm
Right?
describing
X equals
like
X
math.
is a tautology.
Like this is like basic logic. This is not like what do you mean I'm describing a tautology?
Is that not true?
She doesn't
What
know
do
Is
you
that
mean? I
not
don't know
saying that
what's-
a thing is a thing is not a tautology? Is that not correct? And the tautologies
mean?
are not necessarily logically
never heard it before.
fallible. For example, A equals
do you
A.
mean?
We recognize and acknowledge that A
No.
equals A.
No. when you have like a logical. All right, so hold on, I need to explain.
Is she like pulling
you
this from
cannot
the
just
garden?
say
Sorry,
that
I'm
thing.
gonna call this an end.
No, you cannot
Nope,
say no,
nope,
you cannot
nope,
say.
nope.
Wait, hold on, don't interrupt me. No, I'm actually
No,
responding.
absolutely.
To
No,
you.
I'm. Wait.
Why
no.
are you? Hold on. Why are you interrupting me? I know what you're saying, and I can tell you why that's not an accurate representation of what you're saying.
She doesn't know what she's saying.
All right. So.
Okay. Are you gonna let me explain this? All right?
No, I'm
when
not.
you define
Not
what
right now.
something
I'm
is.
not, Riley.
Wait, well, hold on. What do you mean you're
No,
not?
I'm not. Because I can tell where this is going. You're like, this has gotten to a point where like it's gotten like super intense really quickly, and now we're getting.
You're not listening to me, Riley. Please. No, this is actually.
Riley. I have tried to talk.
Don't talk down to me. Why are you demeaning me about this?
I am not talking down to you, Riley. I'm simply trying to talk. Right now, like,
What do you mean? No,
Riley.
literally. Oh, all right, you know what? Fine. I'm gonna talk to you exactly the same way that you're talking to me. Okay?
Do you think that I'm?
Mama, listen. Do you think that I'm? Listen. Do you think that I'm actually trying to harm
It's
you
very
right now?
mature.
I'm literally just trying to explain like a super simple mathematic concept to you. Like, why are you getting so heated about this?
Riley, I didn't do that to you at all. I'm in fact being remarkably calm because
You kept accusing me of being angry and being like.
No, I
Destiny.
asked you if
Like,
you.
that's
I
literally the
asked you if
first
you were
thing that
getting
you said.
frustrated. Now, at one point, I will admit,
Yeah,
I said.
no, I am getting frustrated because you're a public figure, and if you make a bad argument and other people adopt your bad argument, then you are going to
So
lead
you
them in the
are
bad
making
way.
that. This is why I said. So I was correct in saying that you're making the Destiny argument. You're.
That is
What do you
what
mean I'm
Destiny
making the
says.
Destiny
Wait, you're
argument? This is
actually
just like
saying.
common
You're,
sense.
oh,
You make
you're
an
a
argument
public
and
figure.
yours
Well,
is-
guess what? Right now, you are being cringe, and as a representative, a public figure,
What?
as a representative and a public figure, who is representing trans people, by your own argument, your cringiness right now.
Wait,
is-
hold on, wait. How am I being cringe? By pointing out how you are being clearly logically inconsistent? How the fuck is
Wait,
that being
I
cringe?
literally-
I'm looking out for people to make sure that they don't make dumb fuck arguments and lead themselves into bad situations
see
that
why?
you would
Wait,
lead them into.
Riley,
People
Riley,
make
Riley,
more
Riley,
arguments
Riley,
and get fucking
Riley.
destroyed.
Riley, this is exactly
No,
why.
don't
Wait,
talk
wait,
down
no,
to
no,
me
stop
like
this.
I'm harming people when you
Riley,
are literally harming
stop
people
this.
and impugning me morally.
Riley, holy
Why is
God.
Demon Mama harming
This is
people?
why
What does that mean?
I said that we should stop
What has she
this,
done?
like a while ago, like a
You
significant
aren't even
while
listening
ago.
to my. You aren't even like giving any effort to listen to my argument.
Riley, you're literally shouting over me while I'm trying to say things
Yeah, because
multiple
you're
times.
not listening.
No.
You have
Riley,
not
I'm
been able
gonna
to
mute you on. I
incorporate
can't believe
anything that I've
I
said
cannot
so
believe
far.
I thought
Not
I was.
once.
I'm
You
going to-
literally are
I'm
just like,
going to-
oh, a logical regress.
I am
Oh, well, I just
literally
don't
going
care
to
about
mute you,
that. That
Riley.
just doesn't matter to me.
Okay, I've
Is there such a thing, and I might get canceled for this, but is there such a thing as a abuser personality type? Because that's the vibe right now. Maybe that's not okay for me to say.
muted Riley. Just so you know, I have been trying to say something multiple times, just trying to get my point across that I think this is getting intense, and I have tried to ask Riley to let me finish a sentence. Riley has not. I've now muted Riley, okay? I don't like this either, okay? Now, I was very carefully trying to question some of these positions, and it got increasingly intense. And when I noticed that and said, hey, like, there's no need to make a comment here like that, we calmed it down a little bit. But this is a little bit weird, and I don't understand. And I don't understand why I'm being talked to as though I'm causing some kind of problem. You're a public figure who needs to do this. This is silly.
She just said you're doing,
And I
or you're
reserve
harming
the
people.
right on my own show to control what I engage in, okay? Now, I agree that there are some differences. We might have different definitions. We might have different views on this issue. But that doesn't mean that you get to
supposing
shout
she's
at me
correct.
or shout down on me. That doesn't mean that you get to dictate what I do on my show. I'm on like hour 9 now of my show, okay?
Jeez. Wild.
Now, we can go back and we can review this VOD in the future, okay? I'm going to unmute and see if we can come to some peace here, because this has gone way off the rails. And it's not something that I want to do. Riley.
Hi.
Hi. Okay.
So, I'm gonna sit here, and I'm going to talk at this exact tone, and I want to just work this out. Okay?
Sure.
I care a lot about this.
That's fine. I do too.
Okay then. Can you please do me a favor, and I will do the same to you. Do not impugn my morality. Alright, it certainly came across that you did. So
Okay.
please, even if you believe that you didn't, please do not.
Sure.
Okay. So, what about what about logical regress? So, do you acknowledge that that's a valid criticism of the idea that just saying that being a gender is identifying with that gender? Like, do you understand why that might come across as a problem to me?
Yeah, I can see where that could be a frustrating thing.
No, don't say frustrating. Do you understand, like, the concept of what a infinite regress is?
I mean, the idea that, like,
He hasn't
it's sort of like a
demonstrated
circular
any
reasoning
infinite
or something
regress.
along those lines.
Or
That's
why that's a
arbitrary.
problem.
Well, I mean, like, do you understand, like, what it is?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've got the idea of what you're saying. I mean, I'm not immediately familiar with, like, the dictionary definition of the concept, but if you'd like, I can look it up.
Okay. Do you mind if we do that? I really
Sure.
would feel comfortable.
Yeah. Do you want to provide me the
Okay.
definition you're using?
I'll just Google it.
Okay.
All right. The first thing that came up
Bubble is
was the
mean.
Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Sure.
I'm looking at that. Are you looking at that?
No, but I'm listening to you. So.
It says, I'm just reading from the first paragraph. An infinite regress is a series of appropriately related elements where a first member but no last member, with a first member but no last member, where each element leads to or generates the next in some sense. An infinite regress argument is an argument that makes an appeal to an infinite regress. Usually such arguments take the form of objections to a theory, with the fact that the theory implies an infinite regress being taken to be objectionable. That was a lot. Do you want me to, like, explain what that means?
I mean, I think I've got the basic idea. I mean, sure.
All right, well, do you mind if we
Go
just,
for it.
like, walk through it?
Yeah, go for it. Walk me through it.
Okay, so let's just take a basic formula. Let's say that x equals x plus y.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's the formula we've got.
Sure.
Okay.
Algebraically
So if we have
valid.
that situation, or I guess we have to make it,
Or
let's make it y
logically
plus
valid.
x because it'd just be easier to write out. All right, what that means is that if we have x equals y plus x, that means that necessarily x can also equal y plus, and because x equals y plus x, that means that this would also equal y plus x.
Okay.
And then necessarily, we get into another problem because now we still have x there. So we can have x equals y plus parentheses y plus parentheses y plus x, two parentheses.
Sure.
Okay? And then we go beyond there. I mean, I hope that you see where this is going. You can just ...
Yeah, I understand what
This
you're
goes
talking
on
about.
forever.
Yeah, I get what you're.
None of this matters. Again, Demon Mama's definition for what a woman is anyone who identifies with, and this is in parentheses, the social category that is associated with the female sex. That's not an infinite regression. What RGR is talking about is a valid concept, infinite regression, and that can be a problem logically sometimes, but that is not the case here. She has not demonstrated any kind of connection between that phenomenon and Demon Mama's definition. She's simply misunderstanding everything from go.
You're talking
Okay.
about.
So now let's do some substitution.
Okay.
Woman.
But you do realize, though, that there is a significant difference between talking about
Please don't
linguistic
die.
meaning and raw logic, right?
Then this is logic, right? Like defining what
Yes.
a term means is logic.
Well, I recognize that. But
Yes. So we were trying to define what a woman is, or what a gender is. All right. So if we're going to
Sure.
say that woman equals substitute y for identification
Okay.
plus woman, well, that necessarily means that we have woman equals identification plus parentheses identification
Mm.
plus woman. Okay? And then, on from there, woman equals identification plus parentheses.
No, I think this is. I don't think you like. I don't
None
think
of
that
this
this is
matters.
an accurate representation of my claim.
It's
No,
not.
when you say that a
When
woman,
I say a woman, is anyone who identifies as a woman.
yes,
Yes.
it's a woman. Woman equals identification plus
Yeah.
woman.
That woman has no intrinsic definition outside of being an identifier. That's what I'm saying.
But we know. Okay,
Yes.
we know that
It's an
being a
identifier,
woman
it's a
has
title,
some
it has
we
no
know
other
that
meaning.
being. No, we know that there's some meaning. We have
I
literature
disagree.
being able to say what it is. We
No,
have.
I disagree with that.
It
I don't
has
think
no
that there's any
objective
other meaning.
It's nothing.
I don't think that there's any
in
other meaning
reality
besides.
No,
aside
all right,
from
that's all right. You
the
understand what the
changing
argument is, right?
and indefinite social categories
Argument
themselves.
is an opinion plus evidence. So if you don't think it has any other meaning, what is your evidence that it has no other meaning?
Holy
Yeah,
crap,
I can
have
give
no
you.
idea.
I can give you the example of that, which is that no person uses the same definition
Oh, that's
of
bad.
woman at all. We all have.
I'm not talking about everyone using the same definition.
So okay, but are you going to
talking
allow
about
me?
what's
See now.
average
Now here's what's
reasonable.
happened now. Now.
I'm trying. Hey, did I
Okay,
deviate at
I
all?
actually I know I let's have this conversation another time.
Wait,
Because
hold on. No,
no,
I
no,
really
because-
want to like.
no,
why-
like
I'm
the,
being as
the fact
respectful
of the
as
matter
possible.
is like
Why are you raising your voice?
Riley, you have literally
I'm
not
being as reasonable. No, I want
you
to
have
work through this.
literally not allowed me to talk. Every single time I try to talk, you have literally stepped in and interrupted me. And if you go back
What
and you
if-
watch this segment back, you will see that I have literally
we are
not
doing now.
finished a sentence without you butting in and saying to do something. I'm trying to explain my concept of gender. And that
said-
doesn't seem to be capable in this conversation. And what it
No,
feels
then
like
please-
is
He's
that
not even
now I'm being
engaging
held
with the
hostage in a conversation that I don't really feel super comfortable with because
Why don't you feel comfortable? I'm trying. Like, how is my tone? Please tell me how my
She was
tone is
literally
bad.
yelling.
Please tell me how anything I'm saying right now is bad. I'm trying to be as.
Because I
Careful,
feel,
methodic.
and I could be wrong here, but I feel like there is
It's like
a
gaslighting shit.
rippling under the surface of your words. There is a, there are unspoken things, and
Well,
that's
I'm
a
trying,
read.
I mean, like,
and I
these-
recognize that's a read, and I recognize that's a subjective read. But I have reasons to believe that that's the case, and certain word choices are throwing up flags for me that say
Yeah,
that
we
this
had
is
some flags
a
earlier.
significantly more emotionally charged conversation than I was ready for or was hoping to engage in. I recognize you might have some problems with certain definitions of gender. You might have certain problems with this, that, or the other thing. But
Wait, why are you saying I have problems? It's not a matter of having
because you took
problems.
objection to it, is what I mean. I'm sorry if the
Yes,
word
because
problem
if
is
it's
the wrong
wrong,
word.
then I have objections.
Yes. But I don't think that it is. First of all, we haven't decided who's wrong yet because we haven't had the conversation. And
I'm trying to have the conversation.
well, interestingly, as in the process of trying to have this conversation, I don't feel like
She's trying to say that Demon Mama's wrong when she won't even let Demon Mama speak her positions or engage the positions. She wouldn't even be able to state them back to her. So, like, she's literally begging the question.
I am able to actually engage properly because I've been interrupted a lot of times, a significant
Alright,
amount of
then.
times. Okay?
I will never interrupt again. I will sit here, and once you are finished speaking, then I will respond.
Narrator.
Conversation, yes, I do agree with you, hopeful that conversations are a two-way street. Now, what I am saying is that I don't think that most people, including most trans people, have a coherent definition of gender. I don't think that gender has a consistent definition. It is a completely and utterly social construct. And personally,
Minor nitpick, the definition can be consistent. Mostly. It can change as our understanding of gender changes, or as as a concept changes. So in that sense, it's not like consistent, but you can consistently create a concept of gender like the one that we engage with now, and and that can like encompass everything that we think of as gender. So like that could be a consistent definition, but the content of the definition is variable. That's what changes. That's not really a point against Demon Mama, though.
I don't put a whole lot of value on gender. In fact, I'm a gender abolitionist. I believe that in the long run, we will probably never use gender in the long run. It's probably going to take a while for us to get there. The reason why I believe that...
Okay, I'm paranoid. I'm going to check if my voice is actually there. Be right back. Okay, we're good.
That is because I don't believe that you can easily suss out a objective definition of someone's gender, and I think that trying to do so leads to some very troubling societal outcomes.
A lot
Now,
like chairs.
that doesn't mean that I don't think that there is that trans people have a valid complaint when they say, or when the words that they are using. I think that we are limited, most trans people, I think, are limited by our linguistics, that we only have so many words to use, we only have certain societal understandings, and so we say, you know, I'm a woman, or whatever. I don't think that, like, I think that is how we identify how we wish to express ourselves, but that doesn't really mean that there's any intrinsic meaning to being a woman. It is what a woman is, what is a collection of completely chaotic factors that nobody agrees on. No two humans agree on what a woman is. And in fact, you alluded to this previously in our discussion. So the reason why I come to this conclusion is that the reason why I think it is perfectly fine to acknowledge that anybody who uses the term woman is, for all intents and purposes, a woman, is because it is it is not an objective term. There is no specific thing that any one person is referring to, but a loose collection of traits which aren't consistent from person to person. And as a result, I don't think that we should hold these things to particularly strong standards. And I disagree very strongly with your previous allegation that this somehow leads to an attack helicopter argument, which I do not believe is the case. However, I do think that there is risk in the opposite of attempting to boil down and define some sort of objective or singular concept of gender, because I don't think that anybody really has a single concept of gender in their mind. Does that make sense?
I understand your arguments. Can I respond then?
Sure.
Sure. I will try to build a bridge, but I also have meaningful concerns to address. Okay. So, you said that the reason that you think that anyone who uses the term woman is a woman is because it's a non-objective term. There's no specific thing people are referring to, and that they're referring to a series of traits that varies from person to person. Did I quote you correctly?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Okay. I don't necessarily disagree with that. When I say objective, what I'm referring to is not a single unified collection of traits, like not like a single solid checklist that you must meet all of these things in order to be woman. What I'm referring to, and I'll say it one more time because this seems to indicate that there may be a misunderstanding. I'm referring to how the average person in society, and we're constructing a hypothetical average person. Okay. And when we're saying society, we are taking a either larger society or maybe a smaller group or a culture we are taking a group of people, like we're taking the average person from a larger group, and we are pulling them on seeing what traits that person would define as being sufficient for being identified as a woman, and then we look at the average of what all people in that group define to be that category at a given time, which can change over time, which can change over cultures, and that's what we would generally take to define as a certain gender. Gender can be anything. You could have people construct genders that are entirely different from men and women, as long as it is what is broadly defined within a group to exist at a given time, based on a series of qualities that the group has, then gender. So I'm not sure if I necessarily disagree. The thing that I do seriously, and this is like, I'm gonna ask this, and I want like a serious answer. If just identifying as a gender, if just identifying with a quality makes you a quality, then how, then like you said that this isn't the attack helicopter.
This is literally the Bogartis
Why
argument.
is that? Like if you say that just identifying as something makes you that thing, then the problem with me with making that the only, why don't give like small like asides. I stayed quiet.
No, I was literally just stating that I think you've got something wrong in my argument.
Okay, well then let me finish the statement, and then you. Well, let me finish. Okay, I waited for you. Okay, so if all that's required to identify with, to be a gender, is to identify with it, that seems to be a problem because there seems to need to be something else, whatever that other thing is, something else, or else people could identify as anything and they would be anything. I obviously do not believe that. That is what is very troubling about this, because in my opinion, there has to be something else, whatever that something else is, to distinguish self-identification as gender from other things. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I don't think that you're categorizing my understanding of gender correctly, because
okay,
I
wrote
don't
it down.
believe. Well, that's
So,
fine.
just tell me why.
The idea that that identifying something as an attack helicopter, I don't know. Like, this is a pretty significant difference between something like gender, which, in my opinion, can only exist among sentient beings as a part of a social contract. Hence, why it's a social construct, versus an attack helicopter, which is not a sentient object, cannot self-identify, and can therefore only be objectified, can only be treated in the objective. You don't,
unless you don't get to
decide who's a woman. You do get to decide what is or what isn't an attack helicopter, because an attack helicopter is not an agent. See, yeah, this is what we're encountering is a linguistic.
Well, all right.
This is another case of using the same word to refer to different things. Attack helicopter is a thing, you know, like the actual physical object that we call an attack helicopter, and then there could hypothetically be an attack helicopter gender. Demon Mama's made this argument herself, but that might have been after this debate. Maybe her take is like changed over time.
Then I'll change the attack helicopter. All right.
Well,
I'll use a different example.
Sure. Pick another example. And
But yeah, that's just like the concept of xenogenders, where they recognize that man and woman are metaphors for the male and female genders, and they're like, why can't we use other metaphors, like a wolf, or like, I don't know if anybody actually identifies as an attack helicopter, but like hypothetically, if they wanted to, or if that was their legitimate internal experience for some reason, and I'm sure that does not happen, but if it did, that could be valid, because it's just a metaphor. It's like, hey, I identify with these random characteristics that are associated with attack helicopters. Like, I don't know. It's a silly example, but I'm just using what's on the table.
Let's say if someone self-identifies as Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
Okay.
All right? Mm-hmm. They self-identify, they believe genuinely that they are Jesus Christ, that they are born and risen from the grave, that they are literally Jesus Christ of Nazareth. They identify with that. They believe themselves to be that.
Okay, that's not a gender then. She's not describing gender. She's off topic.
Are they Jesus Christ?
Are they Jesus?
Nobody
Are they
is
the
making
literal
that claim
Jesus Christ?
with
We're not talking
regard
about
to
like some
gender.
self. We're talking about like literally Jesus Christ from the Bible.
No, because Jesus Christ of the Bible is an object.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on.
Jesus
What?
Christ of the yes, Jesus Christ of
Because she's not referring to what would be a Jesus Christ gender. She's referring to the person Jesus Christ. She's saying the person literally believes they're Jesus Christ. That has nothing to do with gender. This is literally a non sequitur.
the Bible is an object. Linguistically, Jesus Christ does not exist at
we know
all
that
to us.
Jesus
We're
is a-
speaking of Jesus Christ as the object, as the historical figure that we understand and can identify.
What?
You see?
That's an individual, not gender, though.
We're-
Okay, so then
wait,
let me.
Yes,
all
but
right,
we're
then-
talking. Yeah, we're using.
heck was that?
You're jumping from something that is an identifier. Like, for example, I am a woman, which I think is a very, very, even you agree with me. You even said you agree with me that it's an incredibly difficult thing to define what woman is because there's no consistency across time and space, not
No,
at all.
I didn't say that.
You did.
There isn't,
But-
though.
No, I didn't
that's a
agree
fact.
with your with your elaboration.
If tomorrow I told you, hi, my name is Jesus of Nazareth.
So what RGR is doing here is gender essentialism. She's saying there is an essential, unchanging gender throughout history that you can point at, like it's written into the fabric of reality. Otherwise, her argument makes no sense. Otherwise, it's nonsense.
Are you going to say, no, that's not your name?
I'm going to say, do you mean that's your like? Are you named after the person, or like, are you saying that you're actually Jesus motherfucking Christ?
Well,
'Cause
but
if
those
you
are
say
very
the
different
latter-
things, right? Because a name
Exactly.
is something that you can declare. I can tell you my name is
Yeah, but
anything.
we're talking
And we don't
about
have
a person who
rules.
identifies
Well,
as the person.
It's a completely made-up category to begin
We're talking
with.
about someone who identifies as the person, not just with the name. Like
crap.
they believe themselves to be Jesus of Nazareth.
Yes, but they are making an objective claim. They're making a claim about an object. They're saying, I am the historical Jesus Christ of the Bible. And we can go,
How is Jesus
wait,
an
hold on a
object?
second. Because when you think of Jesus in your mind, we have a specific person, structure, time, place, set of features that define Jesus Christ, the object, right?
Okay.
So
then
Jesus
I'll
Christ
think
didn't
example.
declare
Alright.
himself. Jesus Christ didn't declare himself as Jesus Christ of the Bible of Nazareth. He lived a life, and now he's been written down in books, and we have codified what defines Jesus Christ of the Bible, and that's how we identify Jesus Christ of the Bible. So someone else who doesn't match the object that we've constructed linguistically,
Demon Mama is just
Jesus
flatly
Christ.
correct here.
we can say, well, no, you're not, because we know that Jesus Christ of the Bible is defined as these things. But if somebody says, my name is Jesus Christ of Nazareth, you can't really tell them, no, it isn't, because you get to define what your name is. That is how names work. You get, unless you would argue that people should be able to have objectively assigned names by somebody else, I would think that's silly. I believe
Right,
the
but I
same
mean,
thing
like,
about gender.
Yes. All right, then I will use a different example.
Sure.
All right, because it seems to be like, for
It's
me,
really basic
now we seem to be
for RGR
indirectly
to trip up
defining
on.
what a gender is beyond just identifying as something.
She's
Because
not as
if
bright as she
you
thinks she is.
Apparently, like now we have moved beyond, so we can't. So it's not just. So gender is not just
And I'm a
identifying
dumbass, so
as an object
Take
or
from
a
that what you will.
historical person. Okay, so then what about identifying as the president? I self-identify as the president of the United States. Is this not a person or a social categorization of something?
I mean, I would agree that it's a social category. Okay, we can go all the way through to say all things are ultimately social categorizations because that's how language
Okay.
works. But if we're not going to go that far, making a statement, a claim of I am the president of the United States, we can check that against the linguistic object, the president of the United States, and go, well, they don't meet the category. They don't meet the category that we decide collectively is the president of the United States. So obviously,
Okay.
I mean, you could say that, but that would not be taken seriously because it doesn't match the object that we have constructed as the president of the United States, which, as it turns out, is a pretty clear definition. Like, in order to be the president of the United States, you need to have done such and such things. There's a whole bunch of rules that we use to define who the president of the United States is. In fact, we have a whole lot of rules for that, specifically to avoid things like what would happen in medieval times, which is, there's
So what RGR did was say, here is your position, Demon Mama. Here's why it's wrong. Please respond. And Demon Mama has responded, you're misrepresenting my position. Your argument is invalid because it's not a response to what I said. Here is my actual definition. It completely refuted what RGR was saying. Let's see how RGR responds after this.
legitimacy crisis because how you define who the king is isn't necessarily clear. We have a very clear definition of who the president is so that people can easily identify what the president is. But gender is not the presidency.
Okay. So, all right. Seems. So there's a couple things there.
Sure.
So first, I want to hold on to idea. So you agree then that someone who says that they are the president, who is not the president, is wrong
Oh man.
about that self-identification. Like, if I were to say right now, I'm the president of the United
That
States,
was
you
a
would
good
say,
run.
I am wrong by that criteria you've set out.
Yes, because being the president is not a self-identification.
Okay, then
It
let me ask you.
It isn't a matter of self-identification. Other people define you as
Okay.
the president of the United States.
Then let me ask you this. Can a trans person
Mhm.
be wrong if they self-identify as a gender?
No.
Okay, next logical question. Let's say that we have a trans person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just to explain these answers, or to like dive into them, she's saying that you cannot, or you can be wrong when you're identifying to be something that is not a gender, but you can't be wrong if you like genuinely identify with a gender.
Who is pre-transition,
Mm-hmm.
does not know that they are trans.
Mm-hmm.
They self-identify as a man.
Okay.
Are they wrong?
No. No, they're not. Because that is their
So-
understanding of their gender at the time.
That follows perfectly from Demon Mama's positions. Let's see Riley's response.
And it is their right to declare their gender. Now, I lived my life pre-transition as a man because that was my understanding of my gender at the time. And while I do think that we're incredibly limited in how we talk about these things, because obviously I transitioned and I do identify with the term woman and with pronouns she, her, and with femme aesthetics in general, I don't believe that it is very easy for us to talk about these things because we don't have very good rules about them. So my argument is that with regard to gender, functionally in our society, gender is incredibly abstract. It's very, very personal. So I don't see how there is. In fact, I think we solve a lot of problems by simply allowing people to identify as whatever gender they so please, whatever pronouns they so please, because
Okay, so
we
she's
can
making the same
acknowledge
argument.
that gender is highly, highly abstract. There are no set rules for it. Nobody agrees on the rules for it. Therefore, we may as well treat it as an identifier. And if people want to pursue HRT, we should also allow them to do that for a separate
All right.
reason.
This isn't. I mean, this is all great. I understand this. There's a problem at the beginning. I understand all that you're saying, and it's taken. Wow. There's a problem early on.
Okay.
There is. It's not Demon Mama's.
So, the person. I want to return to this hypothetical.
Sure.
This is very important to me. Okay. So this person, pre-transition trans woman,
Mhm.
self-identifies as a man.
Yep.
So that person to you is a man. I'm asking this because there's more I want to elaborate on.
To me, that person is a
To you,
man.
that person is a man.
If they tell me they're a man, then sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I
then
see
the
what
follow-up
RGR is saying.
question
Never mind.
is,
I was wrong.
is being trans just a personal choice?
I mean, I feel like that's the wording there is a little bit like.
No, I mean, like, that's the natural. Because I mean, I gave you the facts
Well, I mean,
to be able to say that person is intrinsically trans.
It's a personal choice in the same way that choosing to come out as gay is a personal choice.
But why are they trans?
But the thing is, like, being why are they trans?
I need a very specific answer to this question. This is the most important question of all of this. Why, like, is being trans a personal choice? Yes or no?
Is being trans. Depends on what you mean by being trans.
It can be.
All right, then in any way that you choose to
Wait.
Being trans is identifying with a gender that is not the one you were assigned at birth. It's very simple. That can be a choice, or it can be something that's not a choice. There's no rule that says one's internal identity has to... That one's like identity has to not be something that they can choose or craft for themselves. Like you don't get to say that that's like someone's fake identity. How can you know that in like any practical situation?
Well, here's another question. Do you believe that non-binary people are trans?
No. Do not ask. And yes, I do. But no,
Why?
I need you to answer. Yeah, because I have a consistent definition. Do not change the subject. Do not pivot away. I need you to answer.
You don't
this
get to.
question.
Excuse me.
No.
Don't
I asked
do
you
that.
the question. No, I asked you the question. I need you just answer this question. All right, I asked
Are
you.
you? What are you? Are you trying to angle for like a gotcha here or something?
No,
That-
I'm not.
that is
this
what
is
she's
just
doing.
very important.
That is definitely what she's doing, because she keeps trying to trap Demon Mama into saying that like a trans woman is a man, right? She's set that up like twice now. She's got this list of gotchas that she's trying to run through her dialogue script. Like, this is so obvious to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
being
Why is it
trans, and you
important?
can answer it however you want.
No,
You can answer it
Riley?
however you want. I'm not trying to pin you in a box. I'm not trying to pin you in a box. I'm not trying to do anything bad. I just need you to answer this one question. Is being trans a choice? You can answer it however you want. I'm not trying to pin you in a box. Do whatever you want with that. Just give me like at least somewhere in your answer a yes or a no.
Is being trans a choice? If you mean, but when you say by being trans, if you mean the state of leaving the gender that you were assigned at birth and changing to another one, no. It's a choice to pursue that, yes, but in being that, no. That is not a choice. You are who you are, just like you don't have a choice in being human, or you don't have a choice in being what personality you are. Now, the steps that you choose to take in affirming or in realizing your transness, those are choices, of course, and
Yes, I'm with you.
sure, and they are things that I think can be incredibly beneficial, but I think that the idea of being trans is not really like that's. I feel like there's like a linguistic problem in that sentence.
But I mean, like, we agree. Like, yeah, like I can agree with you. Like all the choices that someone makes, like all or like all of the
Right.
choices of how to pursue transition or how to present yourself. Like, yeah, those are all choices. But like, being trans in and of itself is not just a choice, right? Like that's what you said. Like just the fact, like the state of being something which is contrary to what was assigned to you at birth, right?
No, I don't think that would be a matter of choice. No, like I don't
Okay.
think you have any choice over whether you are but that's also how we define transness, right? Because we define being trans as a thing, and so I would argue that you don't have a choice in being trans. If you find out one day, oh, I'm not happy living as the, gender and being perceived as the gender that I was assigned at birth, you don't have a choice in that. You are trans there.
Okay.
So no, I don't think
Well,
that's a choice.
I just want to take this. So we agree that there's
I
something
think it could
more
be, but it's not
to
necessarily.
being trans than just the choice. Of saying. Actually, here I'll paint it another way. So let's say that we have
For
someone.
most people,
Let's say
it's
that we have
probably
another hypothetical person
Okay.
who does not have
Or for most trans
those
people. I mean.
internal mental processes, whatever they are, but does not feel that same need to identify as something that was contrary to what they were assigned at birth. Okay? Can you imagine, like, are we on the same, like, we can imagine this person.
You're saying that someone, basically, you're saying someone who doesn't have dysphoria or something?
Basically, or whatever we want to define these mental processes as. We can just label them arbitrary. We'll call them X, mental processes X.
Well, I mean, I would argue that it's incredibly hard on a philosophical level to litigate dysphoria.
No, I'm not trying to litigate dysphoria.
Well, I mean, you kind of are in a certain sense, and the reason why I would say that is that, like, while I could say that, well, surely, like, somebody who's non-binary doesn't, maybe, you know, a non-binary person who doesn't choose to pursue surgery or HRT might not have dysphoria in the same way that we would categorize as, like, clinical dysphoria, but something nonetheless motivated them to no longer identify with the gender that they were assigned. Right?
Right.
Which
I agree.
may be a form of dysphoria. Like, I mean, it just depends. It may not meet the criteria of dysphoria, but I don't think that dysphoria is necessary for someone to be or clinical dysphoria is necessary for someone to be trans.
No, I agree. I completely agree. I agree with all that. I don't want to, like, I agree with everything that you just said. Okay? I agree that someone doesn't need dysphoria to be trans. I just want to imagine, like, we have to explore this because this is kind of, you're wondering why I was heated earlier. This is the reason why. Okay? So I just want you to just give me your word right now that you'll just hold on to me for a little bit more, all right? It's very important to me. I care about you, all right? I genuinely want us to reach somewhere.
Sure.
Okay?
Yes.
So let's imagine. So we already established that, like, trans people generally have some mental processes which motivate them to identify with a gender that is contrary to what they were assigned at birth, and that is not a choice, right? We've already, like, that, whatever those mental processes are, not necessarily dysphoria, but whatever those are, we just know that those exist, right?
Something exists that motivates them. Yep.
Okay.
Maybe RGR was just, like, so hot under the collar because, you know, it's like a DGG orbiter sort of thing where they all just get really triggered when they see Demon Mama, because we have to watch it sometime. There's this debate between Demon Mama and Destiny where he just goes wild. Like, it's crazy. People lose their minds. Demon Mama derangement syndrome is a real thing.
Let's say that we have a person who does not have those mental processes, all right? And let's say that that person, let's say that they were assigned male at birth, and that they make the statement, I am a woman. Is that person a woman?
Yeah. Yep.
Here's the follow-up question.
Sure.
Okay. So, does that mean that person, let's say that that person, let's elaborate more on this person. So I was hoping for a bit of a budge there, but okay.
Why would I budge on that? I haven't. Okay, go ahead.
Well, here, all right. No, I had to think of another question. So here's the follow-up question.
Just trying to force Demon
Let's say
Mama
that
into
that
a
person
box.
internally identifies as a man.
Okay.
They have none of the mental processes which motivate someone that we already talked about to be trans.
Okay.
Does that mean that person, if they say that they are a woman, is wrong?
You mean if they're, like, lying about their own self-identity?
Yes.
Well, they would be lying about it. So.
But does that,
Yes.
does that mean that they are wrong?
If they are acknowledging with their own self-identity that they are lying about their self-identity, then by definition, yes, because they don't actually believe that they are a woman. they are declaring that despite their own knowledge that it is not the case. So that would mean they are wrong, them personally, on this particular situation, because we've come up with a hypothetical in which somebody knows that they're not a woman, they knows that they're not, that they don't identify with that term at all whatsoever, and they're just saying it just because. So
Okay.
yeah, sure. But I think that that's I don't think that there's any way that you could ever that would ever be relevant in any
It's like an
social
impossible
aspect whatsoever.
hypothetical.
Oh, absolutely.
Impossible to identify.
Yeah, all right, then let's change around the hypothetical.
Okay.
Let's say that instead of this person not having those qualities, let's say that they do.
Okay. So they experience dysphoria?
No, not necessarily. Whatever the mental processes are that motivate someone to identify as trans. Like the ones that we talked about earlier.
Oh,
like
okay.
mental
So
processes X.
So we're gonna call this non-clinical dysphoria, subclinical dysphoria, whatever. Just dysphoria as a general.
I wouldn't call it dysphoria, just because the literature
Discomfort.
doesn't.
Then let's put it that way. Discomfort or desire to not be their their assigned gender.
Sure.
Okay. So somebody has the desire to not be their assigned gender.
Okay. And let's say that person says, so let's say that this is like an AMAP person. They're internally, they believe themselves to be a woman. They want to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
They are closeted.
Sure.
They say that they are a man. Are they a man? Or are they wrong about their gender?
Well, they're not. I mean, I think that using the term like "are they wrong" is kind of is a little bit leading here. I would say they are lying. Yes, they are lying, but there's a purpose for that, right? Because if they're closeted, they're trying to keep it a secret because there might be social repercussions. They know they're lying. They're just lying for a reason.
Sure.
Right. So I don't think they would be wrong.
acknowledge-
That implies a that sort of wording implies, in my opinion, like I don't know, like that they're
Well, if they
flawed,
say that they
but
are,
they're lying for a
if
reason.
all right, if they say that they are a man,
Uh-huh.
that is not representative of who they are.
That's correct, because they are lying. We know this. This is the same. Yeah. There's no. Yeah.
Okay.
You've stated that they're lying. They're not telling the truth about what they actually identify with. So
Tautology.
would they be wrong about themselves? I mean, you could put it like that. I don't think it's. I think they know who they are and they're lying tactically. And I think that there's, you know, we could talk about that, but for the purposes of this, I don't think it's.
So
I don't
if
think
that
the word is.
person, okay.
Sure.
So if that person expresses to other people that they're a man, like let's just be clear then.
Okay.
So there's more to being a gender. I think, like, I'm really trying to make this leap here. There's more. There's something more to being a gender than just saying that you are a gender.
Nope.
Well, okay.
This is the misunderstanding that we highlighted at the beginning of the debate. Demon Mama is saying anyone who identifies as a woman. She's not saying anyone who says they are a woman. RGR is reading that as says. It is a misunderstanding. Demon Mama is talking about one's internal identity, what they actually identify as, not what they're labeling themselves as. It's a very basic misunderstanding. RGR never picks up on it.
Okay. I mean, I would say that then just saying it, but when, I mean, I don't know if that was the exact wording I used at the beginning, but that was, I mean, I assumed that you understood that means, like, honestly saying that. If you're saying something, I mean, vocalizing something that you honestly believe. So yes,
Okay.
If we're going to say, like, obviously it's not literally saying the words that makes you that thing necessarily, but it is identifying with it.
Pretty
it is,
bad faith
it is
interpretation of what Demon
deciding
Mama was saying.
in your mind that I am this thing that makes you that thing.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
And we can elaborate on that even a little bit more.
Sure.
Right? Because you can have someone. So, I tend to agree with the idea that hold on. Someone's asking, do you want to put a print on? No, we're close. We're in a good direction. Okay. So we can add on some more qualifiers, right? To what it means to be a gender, right? It's not just identifying, right? There's also like a degree of pull up time. There's a degree of genuinely believing your identification, right?
Yeah, but I don't really think there's much of a distinction there. Like, I don't think there's much of a distinction between, like, identifying a way and genuinely believing that. I think that's mostly just a semantic or linguistic difference. I think those are mostly the same thing. And I think that, in the situation... What's that?
Well, how are those meaningfully different?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they are meaningfully different. I think that identifying as something... I mean, you can't... Like, we're getting to the point of whether you can lie to yourself or not, and I think that's, like, really hard to do. Like, hard to determine. I don't actually know if, like, we would have to have a conversation about consciousness, and I don't think there's much we can actually do about consciousness because we don't understand human consciousness yet. So there's not much of a progress we're going to be able to make on that. However,
I'm not sure if
I think that, like, somebody identifying as X, when I say somebody identifying as X, the assumption is that that when they say identify, this is their internal process. Now, when I mean when somebody identifies themselves to others and engages in a social thing, when they say, I am a woman, of course they could be lying about that. I mean, if they're closeted and they're actually, you know, and they're telling the world they're a woman, but they actually they see themselves and identify as a man and they wish to transition to a man, I mean, we wouldn't hold that against them because there's a reason for that, right? Because of all kinds of rules that we have on that. But obviously what we've been talking about here is, or presumably, is the internal processes. So I do believe it's possible for you to lie about how you identify, but that doesn't necessarily, but it is not, in my opinion, it is not the public declaration of your gender that makes you the gender. It is your internal conclusion that concludes your gender.
Okay, so Demon Mama has pointed out the flaw in Riley's understanding of her position, of her basic definition of the gender woman. Let's see if she picks up on it.
Gender.
Well, I mean, like, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we are able to reasonably suss out if people can lie to themselves. I mean, like, this is something that I would say is easily observable in the trans community. There are plenty of people who are trans who experience feelings or thought processes which earlier in life they may not be able to understand, but then later in life, when given the proper ability to understand those involuntary internal thought processes in the way that, like, you learn a new concept and it helps you understand a large body of work that you may not have that it helps you understand, like, an entirely new range of concepts that you weren't able to put words to before, like stochastic terrorism. Learning that concept and then being like, oh, I didn't know how to be able to describe this phenomenon I have observed, but now I can describe it. And now I have all these ways to be able to describe these things that I had wanted to describe, right?
I mean, but we're more or less describing the phenomenon of self-exploration. I don't know that it's like, I don't think that, like, I think we run into linguistic and conceptual issues when we start to ask whether people can, like, meaningfully lie to themselves. Because I think,
I mean, like, this.
Well, because, like, I mean, think about it this way. Like, was I lying to myself when I didn't have the words to describe what being trans was? Because I didn't, like, no, I don't think so. Can people be in, like, what's that?
Well, my question is why? Because I'm trying to figure out, like, what being trans
deliberate
is. And if it's not, or actually, I should rephrase this. There's also another problem, it being trans is just, because it seems like there's an issue where if we have it where it's just a personal choice, we run into a lot of other issues really quickly.
Like what?
Why do trans people deserve civil rights and recognition?
Oh, now we've changed the framework because
No. But I'm saying, like, why does any group deserve special recognition? Why do you deserve to be recognized as a group at all? Why are we not advocating for furry rights unironically, like actually unironically?
I unironically advocate for furry rights. Absolutely. Were you not being ironic earlier? Like, I unironically advocate for furry rights. I would literally fight for furry rights. Same way as I would fight, I can tell you right now, I would die for AI rights. If we ever invented a robotic intelligence, I would die.
Wait, hold on. Those are not equivalent. Like, if we're able to, like, the idea to choose to identify with the group that does not require inherent identification, like, that's...
Oh, God.
From a legislative perspective, the argument for why trans people deserve any rights usually has to naturally come back to, it's not a choice, it's who we are.
Well, okay, but what you're elucidating here is a issue of political expediency and not one of truth. Because, for example, I will give you an example of this from the very history of trans people itself, which is that it used to be the go-to line was for trans people to argue that they were X trapped in X body, right? And the reason for that was because it was politically expedient to essentially play on the idea of a soul, whether you believed in a soul or not, and argue that you were a female soul trapped in a male body. That was politically expedient. But we can acknowledge that that's probably not true, right?
All right, hold on. Can I ask you another question then? I just really need to ask this.
Sure.
Is there any meaningful distinction between the way that a trans person self-identifies and the way that a furry self-identifies? Is there any meaningful difference between those two things?
Between the way a furry self-identifies and a trans person self-identifies?
Yeah, a furry self-identifies as a star, wolf, whatever.
Well,
they have
okay,
a persona.
wait. I
think
you have
identify
the
with
wrong...
that persona. They believe they identify with that persona.
Wait. Hold on a second. Are you confusing furries with otherkin?
No, I'm actually.
Are you sure?
Well, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure that either of them work. But I'm specifically talking about furries. Like, I'm having furries in my mind right now. Like, I'm specifically thinking about furries.
So, before we go further, I have a question for you. What is in your mind? What defines a furry?
Someone who has a persona. All right. Some people are saying that not all furries have personas. Okay.
Yeah,
well, then let's talk about furries who have personas. All right. Let's limit it down to just furries who have personas. Let's say, like, a furry who has a persona. It's, like, fully developed. It's someone. It is like an extension of self in some way. Like, it has a name, has a fleshed out character background. Like, they identify with that character. Okay, is there any and, like, let's say that we're also talking about someone who, like, puts on the fursuit, goes to, like, a furry convention, and they wear it around and they're in the fursuit. All right. Is there any meaningful difference between? No, I'm not talking about otherkin. Stop talking. Everyone's thinking I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, because it does sound a little bit like there's a bit of a misunderstanding, but I could be wrong.
No, I'm very specifically trying to talk about furries. So I just want you to answer the question. Is there a difference between someone who has, like, a fully developed persona, they put on fursuit, they identify with that persona, all right, and a trans person?
Okay, she's narrowed it down even more. First she was talking about furries who have a fursona. Now it's furries who wear a fursuit. Those are two different categories. It sounds like she's just kind of winging this. I don't think she knows what a furry is.
Trans woman who says that they're a woman.
Oh, for sure. Obviously, they're completely different things.
Okay, why are they
totally different things? A fursona.
No, why?
A fursona is a character that you make, that you create, and that you pretend to be. I don't know of any furries who believe they're their persona at all. I've never met a single furry like that. Most
Nope,
people,
that's
that's a
not a
character,
thing.
like you would play a character
literally
in
a
ESO.
stereotype.
It's a vessel that you're able to insert yourself in to, you know, put on a mask and have.
That's not to say that nobody thinks that a furry is an extension of their actual identity. That is a thing. It's just that's not inherent to being a furry. You'd have to narrow it down even more. Now there's 5 qualifiers on this.
Have a cathartic experience of playing as somebody else. There is no, there is an obvious difference between that and a trans person. Yes.
Okay, people are saying that I'm thinking of otherkin. So is there any
Yeah.
meaningful difference between the way that an otherkin identifies and the way that a trans person identifies?
Yeah, absolutely. Because once again, I mean, now of course this might change with some future developments in the understanding of consciousness, but at least how this argument would have to be structured. So I may need to readdress this argument in the future. However, an otherkin is making, much like the Jesus situation, a claim to be an object that they are not, which we can identify, and
Why is a woman non-object?
Huh?
Why is a woman not? You keep saying that you keep delineating between things that are not objects. Why are not women objects?
Because I don't believe that a woman is an object. I don't believe
Why
that.
don't you believe that hold on?
I believe it's an
You've
identifier.
described several people and characterizations as objects.
Yes. I've described, yes, because Jesus is an object in terms of the linguistics that we're discussing.
What do you mean?
The object of a sentence.
Okay, when you refer to, when you asked me, so let me. Okay, there's a really good
She's
example that
speaking
people use. I
linguistically.
know people have been yelling at me to use this example all the time, but it's about being a fan. How do you define someone who is a fan of the Seahawks, for example, the Seattle Seahawks? Well, they say they're a fan of the Seahawks, and so they are. We don't use socially. We determine a fan of X.
No, I've heard this example too.
Yeah,
All
but
right,
it's a perfectly apt example
it's
because
not.
why?
Because then you get into the question of, can someone be a fake Seahawks fan?
Yeah, and I would argue no. That's a silly idea. And
It's
the
really
only
not, though. A
person
lot
who
of
would
people
ever,
take
the
very
only person who would
seriously
ever
that.
argue that you're a fake fan is on the same level as somebody who would try to invalidate your gender.
No, but
Well,
these
they're
are
obviously
so,
being. Of course, it's more cruel to invalidate gender because it's more important.
right. But I mean, this is what we're talking about when we talk about. All right, hold on. We need to get at the concept. We need to get at the core of what a social construct is. Maybe we need to back up a little bit. Okay. Do you know what a social construct is, right?
Yes, of course I do.
Okay, a social construct is an idea or a concept that broadly everyone within a given space understands to have either a set number or a general range of characteristics.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
We mutually agree upon these things.
Okay, a Seahawks fan is going to be socially constructed. There's no you can't go out in nature and just find a Seahawks fan.
You can't go out in
as
nature and find a woman.
Created we as a society socially constructed Seahawks fan.
Yep. You can't go out into nature and find a woman either. It's a purely social construct.
True.
Yes, and I don't disagree with that. But I am saying that social construct does not just mean self-identification.
No, it doesn't. There are different
Not
types of social
necessarily.
constructs. And gender is, I would argue,
Doesn't mean it
one
can't.
that is most functionally, an understanding of gender that sees gender as a matter of identity is the most functional version of gender and also the most ethical.
No, it's not. It's really not.
I think it is.
All right, we've already agreed.
Well, I mean, you've
There's
agreed with
more-
me.
Hold on.
She's
You've
just
agreed with me
saying that.
almost
She's
on
not
all of
providing
these
any
points, but then
argument
we
to
get
the
to a
case.
point where it's like, okay, so then when we try to put all my ideas in a line, then all of a sudden there's something that's missing. So I don't know what's missing here because you haven't contested most of the things that you've been questioning me on here so far.
No, I haven't, because most of the things that we're talking about, you're with me, but just
Oof.
self-identification,
Uh-huh.
all right,
Oh no.
is not everything that we've agreed on. We've agreed on more things than just self-identification.
But
You acknowledge
for
that, right?
womanhood?
We've agreed that there are trans people who have more things going on in their head and in their expressions to society than just self-identification?
Well, I don't think we have, actually. I think we've begun to push into what the difference between being trans and being a woman is, which they are different things, because obviously there's multiple types of trans people, but also,
Trans is just an umbrella term, but yeah.
huh?
Trans is just an umbrella term to identify as a gender contrary to the gender that you were assigned at birth.
I agree. Yep, I agree. But I don't think that we've ever moved beyond anything other than like woman is something that you can self-identify as. We haven't
Okay,
we haven't
hold on.
contested that.
All right, fine. Then we need to go back to one very important question, because I
Okay.
still fundamentally like this is.
Well, there's been a
seems to
lot
be,
of
like,
important questions, but if you
Well,
want to
yes,
hit me
but
with
we've
another-
agreed on most of them, and then we get to a point we get a snag. So I need to
Right.
figure out what happened. All right, so we go back. Trans person does not know that they are trans.
Sure.
I think of like a very real life example. I mean, like there are plenty of real life examples, but I feel like
Sure.
if I don't ground it heavy enough, then you won't acknowledge it. So all right, let's take.
Acting like Demon Mama hasn't responded to her arguments when she has.
Let's take. I'm trying to construct that. The first person that's coming to my mind is my roommate, the person who I mentioned earlier in stream.
Okay.
Faith, Emily. All right. She is someone who described to me that for the longest time growing up,
Uh-huh.
right? For the longest time growing up, she had thoughts that made her believe or made her desire to be a girl.
Okay.
But she repressed those desires. She grew up in a conservative household. She grew up in a place which normalized ideas that being in any form LGBT was in no way socially acceptable. And so even if she felt these feelings and recognized their existence without being able to categorize exactly what they were, she suppressed them. Okay?
Yep.
The feelings persisted
Yes.
for a long time.
Yep.
Until she got to such an age where she could not suppress those feelings any longer.
Yes.
The age where she finally comes out and says for the first time, I am a woman, is 25. Up until that point, for the entirety of her life, even though she had known for the vast majority of her life that she had these feelings, she told herself and everyone around her that she was a man, that these feelings were not her being a woman, that these feelings were some nebulous thing that her family was saying that they were, seduction by the devil or impure thoughts or what have you.
No more pistol starts. We're saves coming.
She knew those things were there, but told both everyone around her and herself that they did not mean she was a woman. Did she lie to herself?
Okay. Did she lie to herself?
Yes.
Now, I think that's a really tough question to answer, because I think
That is the whole point of this. All right, then let me back up.
Wait, is that the whole point of this? Because that.
I mean, like, it's a very important thing, because if she was
Step one to trapping
both
Demon Mama.
internally,
Gotcha.
as you put it,
Yeah.
wrong,
That's why it's the whole
and
point.
also externally wrong,
Well,
then there is
but
something else that's there aside from just her self-identification. Something else.
I think that again, I take contention with the use of the word wrong here, because I feel like that's a loaded term. Um, I do. I really do. And again, what you're describing is shockingly similar to my own life, because I grew up in a cult, and I did not even know the word trans until I was about 19. And the moment I realized that I figured out that I was trans, I experienced an incredible amount of severe backlash from my family. And that also at one point led to me like renouncing my need to transition and throwing my hormones away because I thought I could force myself to like do this. I think we get into murky waters where some of these terms, like some of the words that we use to describe this, stop making sense. Because like, was I lying to myself when I genuinely believed at the time, enough so that I threw out my hormones, when I genuinely believed that throwing my hormones away and forgetting about all this trans stuff?
This depends heavily on what you mean by lied, because if you look up the word lie, it means deliberately speaking an untruth or deliberately holding an untrue position or putting that forward. And in this case, it wouldn't be a lie. But if you mean lie to just mean, were they saying an untrue thing to themselves, then that might be true. But it's contingent upon the definition, which hasn't been provided.
Would be the best path of action forward to stop the pain that I was experiencing? Was I lying to myself? I don't know. I don't think that's a useful way of describing it. Was I perhaps mistaken about some of the conclusions?
It really depends on what you mean.
Yeah, for sure. Mistaken? Maybe. I don't know if I would say that I was lying to myself. And I think that's kind of there's a moralistic implication of that, right?
Okay, well, hold on.
Misleading.
Then we don't need to moralize it.
Sure.
And were you, when you
Most
said
people
that to
mean
yourself,
lying
were you
as deliberate.
Was I wrong? Well, I was wrong about dysphoria going away.
No, I'm not asking. I'm asking if you were wrong about you not being wrong.
I mean, I think I was wrong.
It's a very important question, because if the answer is yes, then I'm inclined to agree with you that you are a woman. I've never said that you aren't, and anyone else isn't here. But I'm just saying, if we bite the bullet and you say no, then any feelings that you had internally that caused you the struggle do not matter to whether or not you are the gender that you are. They do, like, they are irrelevant to your considerations as you are making them.
I don't know. I feel like this is getting really like really blurry and not particularly clear anymore, because if we're saying that in that moment, if we were to take a snapshot of it and you asked me, 2 days after I threw my hormones out, and whether what I identified as, I would probably tell you that I identified as a man. And at that moment,
Right.
I don't think I would be lying. I think at that moment I would have been telling the truth, because that was how I identified. Now, was that actually happy for me? Was that actually, conducive to my happiness? No. And I couldn't quite acknowledge that at the time because I was lacking important information and there were external factors that were pressuring me.
But why didn't it make you happy? Like, why?
Oh, why didn't it make me happy?
Why didn't identifying as a man make you happy?
Oh, I mean, that's a complicated question, right? Like, that's a really personal and complicated question, right?
Well,
I mean, I just thrown my hormones. I mean, I can tell you why. I mean, it didn't make me happy because, like, I have never identified strongly with the gender that was foisted upon me at birth. I've never fit in particularly well with what society decides is what you're supposed to be as a man, and so at that moment, it didn't make me happy because it restrained me because of the assumptions that society places on men, on what are identified as men, that grated on me.
Right,
Yeah.
but why didn't you like those expressions of emotion? Why?
I mean, for the same reasons that I don't like anything else, right? It's a personal preference at the end of the day. I mean, like, I guess it would be a very intense personal preference, but that's all things, right? That's right? Like,
but is it just a personal preference? Like, it's it's just completely, entirely, singularly personal to you and nobody else. And hold on, I have to make sure I'm getting this right.
I mean, it's
like, if you
okay.
like, I just need a reason, like, why you didn't like those things. Because my answer is that the reason you didn't like those things is because there are mental processes that we all have that make us more inclined to prefer certain gendered expressions or habits. It's not dysphoria, it's the way that we're wired. Some of us have those preferences, and that to some degree, they are baked into us, right? It's not saying that there's a binary, that's not saying that you need dysphoria, just that, like, there's something that motivates us so that it's more than just a choice.
Are you trying, like, okay, I don't mean to like answer a question with a question, but what it feels like right now is that you are attempting to justify your own existence, or
not trying to
justify the
my
existence of trans people. And I don't think that our existence needs to be justified.
I'm trying to logically define it.
Logically, define which part? Like,
I'm trying to logically.
We have a definition. It's someone who identifies with a gender that they're not assigned at birth. Like, that's pretty logical. That's a logical definition, no? What's the problem with it? And if so, why can't she, like, lay it out?
Define what gender is.
Gender? I mean, if we're going to, if you want to work from, okay, again, I'm a gender abolitionist. I would love if we could get to a point where we don't even think about gender.
That's not what I'm asking. You can, all right, fine. If you want to get rid of the concept, then fine. I'm just trying to define what it is right now in our society. Not what it should be, not what it should not be, just what it is. Descriptively, not prescriptively.
Descriptively? Oh my God, good luck with that. I wish you great luck on that journey, because you will never have an answer.
I have an answer.
I don't think you do.
Yes, I do.
I don't think you do.
Yes.
I don't believe you.
Do.
But go ahead.
Why
don't I believe you on why you don't have a descriptive idea for one of the most vaguest and most misunderstood concepts in the world? Yeah.
All right, all right. You want to? All right, fine. Then the evidence I use. All right, argument equals evidence or opinion plus evidence. The reason why is because I base my opinion based on the totality of all the academic literature on what gender is. I've read all the literature on what gender is, and I base it off of what the prevailing academic theories on what gender is.
That didn't work.
That's why.
Okay. That's great.
Right,
but you do realize that almost no one agrees with you, right?
That's why we save Scummin.
Literally everyone agrees with me.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
The entirety of society does not agree with you, and just because
the prevailing academic consensus on it does.
Citation needed.
No, I really disagree with you. I think you're wrong about that.
If you want, I have all the sources here.
It's perfectly fine. I mean, you can source what an academic definition of gender is, but that does not mean that that is the descriptive claim for what gender is factually. Because
no, I take a scientific realist approach to definitions. You know what scientific realism is?
Yeah, but go ahead.
Okay, but, like, which definition? Who chooses which definition? Riley? Why? Like, realist definition according to whom?
Go ahead and give me your definition of it. Scientific realism is when you basically follow the observable definitions of things within reason, because obviously science is limited.
A scientific realist approach is where a scientific model has no inherent value, but rather is as valuable as it can produce objectively reasonable, accurate, and consistent outcomes. Right? It's a scientific realist approach. So, I take the aggregate of what all the prevailing academic theories on sex are, or on what gender are. All right? All of them. Looked at all of them, and I see, all right, what are they all saying that's the same? And based on that, we're able to suss out, based on studies, based on the prevailing academic theories, people are saying that I should have read theory. I guarantee you I probably read more than you. And I look at what all the theories
Are you saying more than me personally? Or were you talking to somebody in chat?
The audience. I'm looking at my audience. My audience is saying, Riley, read more theory. I trust me, I've read more theory.
I mean, but the fact of the matter, though, is that, like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, like, it doesn't matter how much theory or how little theory that you've read on this particular subject, right? Because at the end of the day, you're synthesizing what...
You're still begging the question on which one is correct. You're just assuming that this particular academic definition I can point to is correct, which she hasn't even provided. But it wouldn't matter.
Which similarities between these different sources you've identified, and then you're coming to your own conclusion based on synthesizing these many different sources. And by the way, I don't believe that there is 100% consensus. There's
overwhelming consensus, yeah.
Everyone agrees with me. Both chats disagree. True. I mean, okay. I mean, I feel like this is I feel like that is a claim that beggars belief.
Leaving citation.
What do you mean it's beggars belief?
The idea that there is a single consensus on what gender is. I don't think that we have one.
I'm looking at the American Psychological Association. Sure. We can go through them one by one.
Go for it.
Gender refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for boys, men, or girls, and women. These influence the way that people act, interact, and feel about themselves.
Okay.
All aspects of biological sex are similar across different cultures. Aspects of gender may differ.
So your definition that you just gave excludes non-binary people.
Yeah, sure. It excludes.
Are you okay with that?
People. No. So I acknowledge the aspects of it.
So this definition I gave, I don't agree with. She just defeated her own argument. It's the overwhelming academic consensus, and she admits that it's wrong. Is she going to go through and say a bunch of other wrong definitions? Or is she going to disagree with all of them and say that the academic consensus is wrong? Because if she is, then what is she relying on? Why did she even bring it up if she doesn't agree with it? I guarantee you she didn't look it up beforehand.
Scientific realist benefit, and I make sure to not include that which clearly is shown to not produce reasonable, accurate, or consistent outcomes.
Okay. So
and also, like, if you want to just like throw out
but you're literally disagreeing with your own sources.
Yep.
No,
so this is where I'm saying that you're synthesizing.
Wait, hold on. Do you literally? All right, hold on. Are you about to throw out the American Psychological Association as a credible source? If you are,
no, I'm not. I'm just saying that their definition is even flawed, and we can recognize this, and we can point this out. And
yes,
my position does not have a problem with that, but your position does, because you just use them to defend. You just use their definition to defend your position, and then I pointed out that would. Wait a second. I'm talking.
Yeah.
And then I pointed out that would exclude trans people, and then non-binary people, and then you immediately had to reel back your source.
No, I'm not reeling back my source. I've never backpedaled my source, all right? What I want... All right, hold on. Now I need to ask you another question.
Okay.
Do you think...
You've had to ask me so many questions, and all of them are of utmost importance, and I'm getting a little bit tired of this, like, of this sort of miasma of inquisition that's been placed over me for the last like hour and a half, where every single thing that I say is somehow deeply important to my position as a public creator, but you get to act as some sort of inquisitor who gets to decide that.
Because you're giving a definition of gender which is not based, which has many problems, which I have tried.
I disagree.
To the best
and you
of
haven't
my
been able. You haven't been able to point out a single
You
problem
literally-
with my definition of
Yes,
gender.
I did. I literally started out by saying that there's an infinite regress, and you just hand wave that aside.
Because
and I tried explaining
you
that.
pointed out
you-
an
I-
infinite. You pointed out an infinite regress, which I then pointed out is not the case, because it is not.
No, it
we're not.
is.
It is not defining as an object. We are defining, in my opinion, gender is a identifier, and identifiers can be declared. You can declare an identifier,
No,
just like you can declare yourself a fan of the Seahawks.
but there's more to being a fan of the Seahawks than just declaring that you're a fan of the Seahawks.
No, there isn't actually, and I don't think
Yes,
there is to
there
being a woman either. I really
Yes, there
don't think that there is. I think that you
Yes,
can.
there
I think
literally
that
is.
you.
No, but literally, you're just no. You're. I want you to listen to me right now. Literally, I gave the basis that you are giving an infinite regress. You responded with, "Oh, well, I just believe that's not the case." That is not a sufficient rebuttal.
That is not
all
what
right?
I said. I provided an argument for why it's not a so-called
Yes, and you
infinite
gave
regress.
a bad argument. You gave, "Oh, well, if you just identify as a Seahawk,
well,
that
I've
makes you a
really
Seahawk
had
fan."
enough of having this conversation with you, Riley, because listen, what it sounds like to me is that you were really like, and this is my conclusion and my takeaway from this. I feel like
We
you
will
feel
still
the
do
need to
pistol
justify your
starts.
existence as a trans
We're
person
just also
without,
safes coming.
and you want to have a 100% definite objective truth when in reality we're dealing with social constructs and linguistic limitations. And I do realize
You
that
have demonstrated
I do
you
realize,
literally don't know what a
excuse me,
construct
you
is.
literally
You don't
interrupted
understand
me.
what a social
Okay,
construct
all right,
is.
I'm
No,
done.
you are
I'm done.
talking down to me.
I am
Fuck
literally
you.
done.
You literally are not willing to listen to me whatsoever. I've gone through hours.
She really does have the same, like, smug, indignant confidence as Wick, doesn't she? Is that mean to Wick?
Hours
RGR,
upon hours
RGR,
of trying to
please.
explain this concept to you.
Okay.
No. Fuck you.
do
Have a
do
good
I?
night.
Is that it?
The European Jewish population, but for me, it's a much broader category. It includes
No, this is something else. Oh, that's it. That's the video. What an awkward debate. That's not as embarrassing as the RGR Doe debate, which we'll probably cover next time. That's still pretty embarrassing. I remember people saying that, like, Demon Mama had a really poor performance there, but I don't think she did. I think she did fine, especially considering the hostile attitude she was dealing with. Like, she was incredibly patient.